The alarm hit like a hammer. Red lights flashed across gray concrete as a voice boomed through the speakers. Full lockdown. All units, hold. A man in orange had pressed his ear against the door of his cell and whispered, "Tonight." He had planned every second. He had hidden strings of braided bedsheets under his mattress. He had studied the timing of doors that never seemed to open. He had watched the small rectangle of sky through his 4-inch window and promised himself he would touch that sky again. But when he tried his move, quick, bold, desperate, everything in the building answered back. Steel slammed. Bolts fired. Floors shook as gates locked in a chain, one after another, like dominoes made of iron. For a breath, it felt like the whole mountain took a breath with him, and then squeezed. Why do they call it the Alcatraz of the Rockies? Because when you push against this place, it pushes back with the weight of stone. You can feel it in your teeth. You can hear it in the way the doors sing when they shut. On this night, the plan met the walls, and the walls won. But here is the question that hangs in the red light. If everything is locked so tight, why are the alarms still screaming? Hours earlier, the day began the same way it always does here. Slow, small, and controlled. The sun was bright over the mountains, but in the cell it was only a thin beam, a pale line sliding across concrete. The prisoner with the plan, let's call him Carter, counted his breaths and traced that line of light with his eyes. He knew there were cameras. He knew there were microphones. He knew the doors were run by people he would never see, somewhere behind tinted glass. He also knew that every piece of this place had a job. The window slit to break the view, the hard bed to make time heavier, the sealed door to keep sound in. He was smart. He was patient. He wasn't rushing. He was waiting. A guard named Diaz walked the tier with steps that didn't echo. He didn't shout. He didn't bang a stick on the bars. There were no bars here, only steel and silence. Diaz checked the feed on his wrist screen, checked the slot in each door, checked the log on his tablet. Every move had a box to tick. Every hour had a rule. He kept his voice low when he spoke into the radio. Unit C, secure. Inmate counts confirmed. He had learned long ago that this building liked calm voices. Loud ones bounced off the walls and came back sharp. Carter saved the bedsheets for last. He didn't tie them together yet. He wouldn't risk that. He slid them back under the mattress and set his eyes again on the little strip of sky. Somewhere beyond the concrete, beyond the fences and buried sensors and the coil of wire like a shining crown, there were roads and signs and gas stations and people who said, "Good morning," without thinking. He pictured them. He liked to picture them. He told himself he was done with being dangerous, but he wasn't done with wanting air. Midday, the building loosened by a hair, the way a fist opens a single finger but not the whole hand. Carter left the cell for his hour alone in a high-walled pen outside, his yard. It wasn't grass. It wasn't wide. It was a concrete room with a slice of sky, like his window but bigger. He turned his face to the sun. He stretched his arms. There was a ball, scuffed and old. He kicked it. The sound was small and hollow. On the far, Carter bent to retie his shoe and looked for tiny things most people don't see. A seam in the drain cover, a notch where a bolt met a plate, a hairline crack in the wall. He didn't find weak spots. He found choices. Every inch said the same thing. This place was made to say no before the question even formed. Back inside, lunch came through a slot. Carter ate without tasting. He ran his hand over the desk built into the wall. He kept his fingers on the edges, memorizing every curve like a map. He had tried maps in his mind for months. Doors. Cameras. Hallways. He never saw the control rooms, but he guessed where they were. He guessed wrong on purpose in his head, then corrected himself. It kept his brain moving. It kept the clock from crushing him. In the control booth, Diaz watched a monitor show 12 angles at once. A blinking square told him someone in Unit D was trying to talk to someone in Unit B through a vent. He muted the channel and sent a message to a different post. Noise bleed. Check duct seams. He took a sip of cold coffee and looked toward the mountains. They didn't look like a wall from here. They looked soft. But he knew better. This place didn't need cliffs and ocean like the old island prison. It had height in the walls, depth in the ground, eyes in the ceiling, and the kind of quiet that tests a person's heart. As evening drew in, clouds stacked over the peaks. The sky strip in Carter's window went from pale to orange to gray. He lay on the concrete bed and rehearsed a list in his head. Step 1, Step 2, Step 3. He had no tools. He had no partner. What he had was timing. He had learned the rhythm of meal rounds, the sweep of the cameras, the seconds between a door shutting and a report getting filed. He told himself, "You're not escaping. You're just moving. Moving is not a crime. Staying is the sentence. Moving is just a breath." He waited until the shift change, when radio traffic always rose for a minute like a wave and then fell. He slid the sheets out. He twisted them into a rope so fast his fingers burned. He was thinking of a drop, not a climb, down into a service space he thought he had found by listening to pipes and counting steps. The slot in the door clicked for the last count. "Check," a voice said. The slot closed. Silence came back like a blanket. He breathed in. He breathed out. He pressed his ear to the floor and thought he heard a hollow sound under one corner. He gripped his rope and pushed his weight where the concrete felt thinnest. That was when the alarm hit. It didn't start loud. It started like a heartbeat, deep and steady, and then rose into a long cry that made the air feel thin. The light over his door flashed red. He stood. He tucked the rope under the bed. He stepped away and tried to look calm. A camera blinked at him. He smiled at it, small and strange. He had a plan for this too. If they opened the door in a hurry, if they rushed, he could. They did not rush. They didn't come at all. The doors on the tier locked at once. The doors at the end of the hallway locked. The doors beyond those doors locked. In the booth, Diaz didn't stand. He didn't shout. He slid his thumbprint across the console and spoke in a level voice. "Lockdown confirmed. Possible breach indicator Unit C. Deploy Protocol 7. This building was built to fight panic by having no need for it. Carter felt the floor hum as heavy bolts threw themselves into steel. He heard air shift and smelled something sharp, the scent of systems turning on. He looked at the ceiling vent. He looked at the drain. He understood what the nickname meant. Alcatraz of the Rockies is not just a joke or a headline. It is a promise baked into concrete, written into the angles of walls, hiding in the way the corridors bend so you can't see two doors at once. If the old prison on the island had water on all sides, this place has a sea of rules. And rules do not sleep. Minutes stretched. The siren eased down and then up again, and then all at once, the power went out. Darkness swallowed the entire block. For a few seconds, there was no hum of fans, no click of cameras, only the slow drip of water from some pipe above. Carter stood frozen in that pitch-black silence. He knew this wasn't supposed to happen. ADX Florence never went dark. Every bulb, every circuit, every lock was backed up twice. But now, all he could hear was the whisper of his own breathing and a faint echo down the corridor. Somewhere, a backup generator should have kicked in, but it didn't. The white glow that had framed his door flickered again, then vanished. Carter's pulse thudded in his ears. He took a cautious step back, straining to see anything in the dark. A low voice came through the intercom, barely audible, like static. "All units hold position, power reset in progress." But even the voice cut off halfway, swallowed by the thick concrete walls. Carter's instincts took over. If the locks were electric, and for a few seconds, dead, this was the moment he dreamed of. He pressed his shoulder against the door. It didn't move. He tried the handle, even though he knew it was useless. Still locked. The system had fail-safes for everything. He realized then what made this place more terrifying than any other prison. It wasn't the guards or the fences. It was the machine itself. ADX Florence didn't rely on men to keep people inside. It relied on the mountain of steel and silence that never needed rest. Down in the control booth, Diaz's monitors blinked back to life one by one. His heartbeat slowed only a little as he saw every feed flicker into motion. But then, one square stayed black. "Unit C, Cell 23, he muttered. That was Carter's cell. Camera offline. Sensor offline. He keyed the mic. "Maintenance, I need a visual on 23. No response. Just static. Carter leaned his head against the wall and whispered to himself, "You don't beat the Alcatraz of the Rockies." His words bounced back to him, small and flat. As the hours passed, the lockdown lifted section by section. Diaz made his last check near midnight. The tier was calm again. From behind his door, Carter watched the red dot of the camera come back on. It blinked once, steady, like an eye that never sleeps. The next morning, the warden himself walked the corridor. His shoes clicked on the polished floor. "You know why we call this place that?" he said to Diaz quietly, nodding toward the cells. "Because the old Alcatraz had water around it. Here, the mountain itself is the ocean. And even the ocean can't break these walls." He paused at Carter's door. "You hear me, son?" he said, his voice cold but calm. "You don't get out of the Rockies." Then he turned and walked away. Carter didn't answer. He just stared at the tiny slit of light on his wall, the one that showed him a thin piece of sky. He thought about what the warden said, about the mountain being the ocean. He wondered which was worse, to drown or to be buried alive. Outside, snow began to fall over the Colorado peaks. The white flakes covered the razor wire like frost on a crown. The guards rotated their posts, the cameras kept turning, and the alarms quieted again. In the deepest cell of the most secure prison in America, Carter lay back on his concrete bed and whispered, "The Alcatraz of the Rockies." His voice was calm now, almost proud. Because in some twisted way, surviving here, breathing here, was its own kind of escape. And as night fell once more, the red light over his door blinked softly in the dark, like a heartbeat that would never stop.